Welcome to the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. I want you to do me a big favor before you check out this clip. I want you to hit the like button. I want you to throw in a comment and make sure you're a subscriber to this channel. And then I want you to share this video with your friends. Help us defeat the algorithm. And then if you like this content and you appreciate this content, please head over to patreon.com/the Mike and JD Show and support the show. That is how we actually get funded to be able to do this. So we thank you very much for being here. And now enjoy the clip.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. A made no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This is an A game, better bring your A game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. A made no rain from the track when we unite.
Hey, now it's the Mike and JD Show, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm joined as always by JD by God Oliva. How you doing, JD?
Not joined as always. I have made my return. Fun is back
Yes.
on the Mike and JD Show, and yeah, I actually missed doing the show last week, so I'm back.
Yeah.
It's good to be home.
How was that? How were the state championships?
Could have been better. Could have been worse. Could have been better. We had a kid that we thought could win it. He wound up taking fifth. We had a kid that we thought was going to place. He got nervous under the bright lights. You know, I had a kid that was very average all year who was a match away from placing, and he outperformed. But we had everybody else kind of underperformed a little bit. So, it could have been a lot worse, but I think it could have been a lot better. I think we overachieved in getting kids there. I think that we did what we wanted when we got them there. But, we have high expectations. So another year to build, another year to grow.
Well, it's awesome, man. Well, we are glad to have you back. Thank you to Joe Gilbert. Fed Pilled Joe himself was in the co-host seat just last week, and it was really fun to get to talk to him. It's kind of nice just to have my cousin on the show, because I don't actually we don't actually get to talk like face to face. We text a lot, but that's about it. So it was nice just to have like a family member on the show who was kind of just as big of wrestling fanatic as we are. So that was a lot of fun. And I am so excited for what we got coming up on the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel next week. So if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're on the Mike and JD Show network, thank you for being here. If you're on the Voices of Wrestling network, thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate it. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And we're also on Patreon, patreon.com/the Mike and JD Show. It's where you can get this audio early and ad-free. And plus a bunch of bonus content. Speaking of which, next week on the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel, we are going to introduce Sting Week. So JD and I on our Patreon, we've been banking episodes where we're just like, this actually just happened like naturally one day where we just decided to start talking, like we just want to talk about Sting more. And we started to do that. So our first episode was like, I want to say like in November, and it wasn't like planned to be a part of any type of special deal or anything, but we did a full podcast just talking about the history of Ric Flair versus Sting, and that great feud, because AEW had just brought Flair in, announced him that he was going to be a part of Sting's last match, all that stuff. So we did a full episode on that, and then we just kept talking about Sting. And we're like, I think we got something here. We have like a full week of episodes, so they're already most of them are already on our Patreon. JD and I have one more to record. We're going to do that this weekend. We're going to record Sting versus Hogan. But we have Sting versus Flair. We did Sting and Vader, Sting and Cactus Jack, Sting versus the Dangerous Alliance. Joe and I last week, we did Sting versus Kurt Angle, which was a lot of fun. And then, so now we got another one. Yeah, we got another one coming up, Sting versus Hogan. So we have a full week of just episodes that I'm going to release every single day on our YouTube. Sting Week. It's going to be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. I'm excited. I think we're going to load up on some of our Patreon content. You got to brace for impact. I'm coming out of retirement with JD Oliva Project this weekend. So yeah, man, cool.
Yeah. If you want early access to all that stuff and you don't want to wait like to get one show a day on YouTube, and we're going to have full audio and video on Patreon, because some of our stuff I can't put on YouTube because it's just JD and I watching matches. And WWE they'll block our shit for it. So like we watched the full 1992 War Games match where Sting, the Sting Squadron took on Dangerous Alliance. And that was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. By the way, if you haven't ever watched War Games 1992, go ahead and pause the show. Go watch War Games 92. Mike and I will be back. We understand. We will. We are not the Dangerous Alliance. We are not the Swinging Squadron. We're below the totem pole. So, like, go watch that show. It's still, I think it's still the best War Games match that I've ever had.
Yeah, you dude, I had not watched that in years, and I was honestly like a little bit surprised at just how well that match held up. Like after all this time, over 30 years.
I think a lot of WCW stuff from the early 90s, the work rate was so different than WWF at the time. And I think a lot of it has aged really well because I think that pro wrestling has kind of come close, like mainstream wrestling has come closer to what WCW was in ring wise at the time than what WWE was at the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't see a lot of like what WW, with the exception of Brett, with the exception of like, you don't see a lot of what WWF was doing back then in wrestling now, but you see a lot of what WCW was doing, like that, you know, that high impact style. And you saw that in this match. Like, it was kind of a, what we see, because, you know, today the ring busts, not frequently, but frequently enough where we see the ring being destroyed. In 1982, you never saw, you know, people hitting each other with the actual turnbuckle. Like the metal turnbuckle, you didn't see people beating each other with that back then. So, in some ways, the match was ahead of its time. A lot of ways.
No, in a lot of ways, it really was ahead of its time. But speaking of not holding up very well, John Cena was on Howard Stern yesterday, and I'm gonna go ahead. And, I'm sure JD, you have probably not heard this audio. I can't play the whole thing, but Brandon Thurston posted a clip. Yeah. Brandon Thurston played a clip. I'm going to play a couple of seconds of it, then I'll read a transcript from it. But he had spoke to Howard Stern. This was from yesterday. He actually recorded about 5 minutes of a little over an hour of their conversation. I better get to the present screen. I almost just played it to where I was going to be the only guy hearing it. So let me actually get this up. So Stern, I thought, you know, people giving Stern a hard time. And as you guys know, I'm a big Stern fan. I understand what he was doing whenever he set this question up. He's trying to make John Cena feel comfortable and make him open up when talking about the subject. But little did he know that John Cena is super roboto when talking about Vince McMahon. Here's some of Howard and Cena from yesterday.
But this is a guy who's been so good to you.
Sure.
And so great in your career. I imagine it's a mind fuck. And then when you get asked about it, it's like, it's too complicated to even talk about.
So I don't think it's complicated to talk about. I think it's complicated to listen to. And that's kind of why I don't necessarily put a lot of time and equity into it.
Yeah.
Again, I think there's still a long ways to go.
Yeah.
I can say this. I'm a big advocate of love and friendship and honesty and communication. But in the same breath, I'm also a big advocate of accountability.
Yeah, me too.
I think you explained it well of if someone's behavior lies so far outside your value system that the balance shifts of like, man, I can't operate in a world where this works.
Yeah.
That's the end result of being accountable.
But you do,
okay, I can't listen to it anymore. So
but you,
it was he was trying so hard not to say this guy's a fucking creep. You know what I mean? Like he just couldn't say it.
No, but he does. He's like talking about, well, he's my friend. Ultimately, he came back to Vince as his friend. So his value system, you know, little bit, you know, his value system was perfectly fine with the dude shitting in someone's hair. Right? I can't process this, man. Like, it's not hard to just kind of not say nothing. You know, and he manages to say so many words without fucking saying a thing. Right? This is why he was the centerpiece of WWE for so long, because he's just so full of shit. Like, you can't, like, God forbid you use the word Taiwan in a sentence, John. But I mean, like, this you tap dance around. Fuck. Like, I'm super disappointed in him as a human being, like, at this whole time.
Me too, because he's always kind of like one of the good guys, you know what I mean? But he said, right now, I'm gonna love the person I love, be their friend. I love you. You have a hill to climb. That rape charges, sex trafficking charges, hill to climb. That's a pretty big hill, buddy. There's a saying of you don't know who your friends are until shit hits the fan or shit hits somebody's hair or
Yeah.
your back is against the wall. That doesn't make any of what's going on any easier to swallow. Just telling someone you love them. It's a hill to climb, and we'll see what happens.
Or
That is one John Cena on the sex trafficking charges against Vince McMahon and the WWE.
or when you forcibly press someone against the wall and hold them there while you violate them. We're not talking about a guy who got busted for bringing drugs over the border, right? This isn't Steve Williams in 1992. This is abhorrent charges, and I hate that we have to fucking do this all the time. But sometimes I feel like people stuff slide, and right, John Cena is very well trained in the media and how to deal with media. But this isn't the first time that John Cena's made a complete ass of himself on the Howard Stern show. Howard's better at it than most people, quite frankly, because he went on Stern, almost 20 years ago, and shit on the late Chris Canyon, right? Like, I don't know, man. We're at a person is defined by how they act in moments of conflict, and all I'm seeing from John Cena in moments of conflict is cowardice. And it's really disappointing. It's really disappointing.
He has an opportunity to get in front of it and be bold. He can say, Vince, absolutely, like I owe a lot to him and yada, yada, yada. But if the shit that they're saying about him is true, like I want nothing to do with that guy. Like, but instead he dances around and uses like corporate buzzwords. Like it goes against my value system. Like be a human being, dude. Say like this is disgusting. It's abhorrent. And if it's true, and I'm not gonna have this guy in my life anymore. You know what I mean? Like I think that's okay to say, and I think it's okay to say if it's true, because especially if like that's your friend, like that's somebody that you're close to, and you probably want to wait for all the facts to come out. But like it's more than just one allegation. It's like we're like Weinstein, Bill Cosby level, like to where we're talking about a lot here, and more just keeps coming out about not only the stuff that he was engaging in, but stuff that he overlooked all throughout his career.
We're knocking on Epstein territory, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah.
Is he so programmed? Like, is he such a corporate robot that he's just kind of eradicated all actual human feeling from his actual persona now, where all he can do is just be John Cena, the corporate puppet, and like human part of him totally gone? Like, is that where we are with him?
I think so, because JD, okay, say JD, you're in a movie, right? JD gets cast in a movie. It's a big movie, a big picture, and it's screened very well. The audience scores are through the roof. And when it comes time to release the movie studio just tosses it away. Like say Wile E. Coyote versus Acme, right? Which is what just happened. John Cena was in that movie. Howard asked him about that and said, "Aren't you pissed about that?" And he goes, "Well, no, I did my best in the movie and it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it." And they felt that this was the best thing they could do. They're just moving chess pieces here. And this is just one chess piece that they moved. And that way they can save it for another move later. I'm just like, dude, he is a complete robot at this point. He has no human emotion.
There's no human emotion there. He's fucking no. I was gonna say he was Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation, but that's not even true. Data's whole arc was that he tried to have human emotion and tried to be human. John Cena is one of the freaking Borg. Like he's just got no humanity left in him. Like it's just these are. And I kind of understand what he means about like, 'cause there's a lot of actors that have the opinion of like, hey, I did my work while working. Whatever happens after is after. I interviewed Bryan Cranston once. And he said, my reward is doing work because I can't control what happens after that. Because again, like so many actors like live and die by their reviews and how this thing performed and blah, blah, blah. So I understand that. But then in the same time to go ahead and start complimenting Zaslav's moves, like that's when you lose me. It's like there's nothing left in him. Like the whole WWE corporate literally broke inside of him that's a living, breathing, emotional human being. And we're left with just this automaton, this android. Like, fuck, dude, show some fucking emotion. Like,
yeah, I hate to say be more like Randy Orton, but in this case, be more like Randy Orton. Now, people are still coming after Randy Orton, but I thought that his comments were a little bit refreshing when he was asked about it. This is from Sports Illustrated. He said, "I got to say this. I wouldn't be where I am without Vince, taking a chance on me a handful of times. I would not be where I am today without him. But fuck, I'm reading this shit, and what you've seen and read, and I've seen and read as far as commenting on it, it fucking hurts my heart. And then he did a couple more interviews, but I was just like, I think that's a very like honest way to say it. It's a human response to this, because I know, and what Howard was trying to get at, and that's why he's probably the best interviewer that there is out there at this point. I mean, the guy's been doing it for, almost 50 years. Where he was trying to come at it from not like an antagonistic approach when he's asking the question. He's trying to meet him on a human level, trying to open up that human side of Cena, and he was met with the most robotic corporate buzzword like talk in history. And I was just like, it's like, damn, like if you can't get real with Howard, man, who can you get real with?
Randy Orton is someone with a checkered past. I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that. He's very, very immature, but over the last few years, it seems like he has made an effort to become a better human being. Like, it seems like this marriage is working. He's trying to be a dad. Like, I'm a firm believer in men's past should not be erased, but I try to make value judgments on people based on who they are now, and understand that we've all got skeletons in our closet. We've all got things we're not proud of. We're all making mistakes every day. Right. So like I see this from Randy Orton. I see a guy who understands the severity of the situation, and who's acting like a real person, and who seems like he's acting like he didn't know any of this stuff, like saying something that hurts my heart. Like Randy Orton, which is so funny because on camera, he's the one that always came off like the automaton robot. And John Cena was always the guy who seemed like he was so human, which just goes to show you that wrestling is bullshit, right? I don't know, man. I'm actually, Orton's not a perfect person. I don't think he'd tell you he's a perfect person, but his reactions to this are far more human than the overwhelming majority of wrestlers I think we've heard from on this subject.
Yeah. He really is. And you know what? Like I think you said it perfectly. Like I'm also a guy that has made some mistakes, and kind of like in my position now where I'm a first sergeant, like a first sergeant light. Like I have a guy over me, but I handle a lot of the work and a lot of the cases. And like somebody comes in, I'm like the perfect guy to talk to about their problems, because chances are I've either experienced it myself, I've done the things that they've done, or I've been close to somebody that has done those things, or that has had those things happen to them. And I can relate to them on a human level. Right. And so when I see a guy like Randy Orton, like actively making changes in a life, I'm just like, good for you. Like, I hope nobody judges me based off the guy that I was when I was, roaring around Korea when I was 25 years old. You know what I mean? Because like I'm just not that. I'm not that dude anymore. Like I'm 40. I'm married. I got a kid. Like I'm a completely different dude. Like the things that I would say to people back then are just not going to come out of my mouth anymore. That's just not who I am.
I was having a conversation on Sunday with a friend of mine who's getting into coaching, and I was telling her that, I said, people like us, we've got, I use this not specifically Mike, but just like as a metaphor, but we have battle scars and war stories, and we've tasted failure and defeat and victory. And like, these are the things that are going to make you a good coach. These are the things that make you a good teacher, make you a good mentor, is the fact that you've had experience in life, and you're going to take those life lessons and apply them. Right. And you're using them to make young men better men, right? Yeah. That's your job. It's kind of mine too. Like, this is what we do. And I hear Randy Orton, I hear a guy who's, I believe, trying to be better, right? Like I think we all have like regrets from our 20s. Who doesn't? If you can't look back in your 20s and go, God, I wish I didn't do that. Like what, And I try to live straight and narrow as much as possible, but like, even I have stuff where I'm like, why did you do that? Like, those moments.
Like on a daily basis, I'm like, man, I shouldn't have said that way. Right. Or I shouldn't have treated this person like that. Like that should not have been my response. But here's how like you're growing, and here's how you're like, kind of a wiser person, is you're willing to take accountability for those moments and like, hey, look, I shouldn't have said it that way. Like that's not the way I meant it. Or maybe you did mean it that way. But like, you know what? I'm having a rough one today. I need to be better than that. Hey, forgive me. I'll try my best not to let that happen again. Like that kind of like daily accountability. I think is very important in the growth of everybody. And that's why like I try not to dogpile on somebody who's actively trying to make a difference in their life. Now, if they're not really one of those people that's like willing to take accountability, they're just hoping everybody forgets. Well, that's a little bit different, right? Because you really haven't, you're still carrying that burden, right? And you're wanting everybody to forgive you despite the fact that you're not actively changing. That becomes a little bit different. And so, and that's why I hate to see people kind of getting away with things time and time again without ever changing. And to circle back to Vince, that's the type of guy that we're talking about, right? Like this isn't a guy that made mistakes. This is a guy who committed horrific crimes against humanity, right? We're multiple times and continue to get away from it. And if you're wondering why we start the show every week on this stuff, it's because it's about time that this guy face some type of accountability, right? And what that is, that's up to the court system. That's not up to JD and I. If I had my way, I'll tell you offline exactly what I think. But
I've heard.
I think but I think that's why it's important that we continue to talk about the story. We talk about the villains in the story, and unfortunately, it's not going to get. I don't think it's going to get much coverage. But John Cena just became, I think, like a minor, like bit part villain in this story with his lack of response, I would say.
Like, we always talk about in coaching, you can't be doing things the way your coaches did it or the way that, it was done you were doing it 10 years ago, right? We're trying to grow. We're trying to be better people. We're trying to look back on how things were and I'm going to be better. And the people say, well, this is the way it's always been. This is what I did. So it's fine. And that's what Vince is going through right now. It's this is the way it's always been. It's fine. Everyone's on board with it. And unfortunately, they created a culture where that kind of behavior was not only tolerated, but it seems like it was celebrated. Yeah. And I guess this is where I'm at. And I've talked about it multiple times on the show over the last couple months. It's I'm so thoroughly disgusted with how our peers in the wrestling media and wrestling fans are trying to write this off or forget about it, that it's really had an impact on my enjoyment of pro wrestling as a whole right now. I'm trying to get over that. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to work to be better. But it's been tough. And then you hear someone like that you do. Man, I thought very highly of John Cena. I really did. He's the good guy, right? He had the hustle, loyalty, and respect thing. It seemed like he believed in that. And with the stuff with the Make-A-Wish kids, but I hear this and I'm was that just part of a, and then again, I'm just pontificating here. Is that part of a carefully crafted image? Is that was that stuff you did to make it look, you know what I'm saying? I have to, when that's your reaction to human suffering, it makes me question everything I thought about you. And again, maybe that's my problem. Maybe that's something that I have to work on. But I mean, it's just, I'm having a hard time reconciling it from I just expected more from that guy.
Yeah, me too. And a real lack of empathy from the alleged victims, right? And I think that's, the key part of it. And he just, I don't know, he just showed no emotional.